first story I want to dive into is this potential hotel strike in Los Angeles. Now, for those who are not aware, the hotel industry is very profitable business. If you can imagine, hotels in a city like Los Angeles obviously brings in a lot of money for the city, right? There's the movies, there's the Hollywood aspect, but also tourism. If you go to visit LA, you're more likely to what? Probably stay in a hotel. So employees of the hotel industry in Los Angeles are contemplating going on strike due to low pay and other things. And this could actually be the largest hotel strike in the history of the United States. Let's go ahead and dive right in. More Perfect Union, thank you so much for this.
Imagine having to commute so much that you can only get about 3 hours of sleep at night. That's just a day in the life for Brenda Mendoza, a hotel worker in LA.
We make sacrifices for our families. At the end of the day, we're the ones who are, doing the job. And it doesn't get easier.
Brenda is one of 15,000 hotel workers who recently voted to authorize the largest strike in the U.S. hotel industry in 50 years.
People are angry. They're angry that they can't pay their rent. They're angry that they have to move further and further away. And they're angry that they're working harder than ever and they're not making enough to survive.
Now, this piece here about moving further and further away, most of this is due to gentrification. It's not just LA. It's happening in cities like DC and Boston and New York City as well. Even some of the southern cities like Atlanta. And I think that this is a small piece of a much larger issue because this has been happening for quite some time. What happens is, like, during gentrification, you have these families that had these homes and communities in the city, in the urban areas. But due to gentrification, they have to move further out because the rent has started to increase, right? So they can't afford to pay rent there anymore. So they move further out. But here's the problem. Oftentimes, most of the jobs are concentrated in the city, in the metropolitan area. So you still have to commute to the city to work for most people. This is a similar situation here in Eastern Massachusetts, too. It's probably no secret that most of the jobs are in Boston or Cambridge, Somerville, that area. So if you can't afford to live there, you're going to have to commute there. And depending on, your price range, you may have to commute for quite some time. So that's what's happening here in LA. These hotel workers are not making enough and they live further away.
I work at the JW Marriott. I'm a uniform attendant, and I've been working there for about 13 years, give or take, 13, 14 years. I was born and raised in Koreatown, living in a single, and then our rent started increasing, so we ended up looking for another apartment, something that we were able to afford, and little by little, it's been forcing us to move further out.
Koreatown, the Koreatowns, the Chinatowns, the Little Italies, like those neighborhoods in these cities have been gentrified. Our so-called quote unquote Little Italy in Boston, the North End, heavily gentrified. You'll still see the Italian restaurants there that have been there for generations. But what you'll notice is that those families no longer live in the North End. They live further out in Revere or Saugus or even further north in places like Gloucester because they just couldn't afford to live there anymore once gentrification started to give way. So yes, even places like Koreatown, people are having to move out.
My commute used to be like 10 minutes, and now it's become like 2 hours and a half in the afternoon and 1 hour and a half in the mornings.
To save money on gas and car insurance, Brenda drives with her whole family in one car, and that means an even longer commute. They usually leave the house at 3 a.m. and don't get back until 9 p.m., which doesn't leave much time for sleep.
Sleeping, give or take 2 hours and a half, 3 hours is max during the week. Sometimes I don't even take my lunch.
If you have that type of commute, you know what that means, right? By the time you get home, you probably have enough time just to eat and go to sleep. You may not have enough time to cook. So this is where unhealthy eating habits can come in, where you're just picking up food on the go because it's quicker and faster for you, and you need to get to bed because you have to get back on the road again at 3 o'clock in the morning. So this is what's happening to her, but she's just one of many people in a same situation like this. So there's that. Also, when we talk about your health, that can't be good for your mental health. That can't be good in reference to stress. And if we want to talk about your physical fitness, when do you have time to work out? When do you have time to go to the gym? When do you have time to do sit-ups and crunches and things like that if that is your schedule? This is one of the reasons why people who are poor, people who are lower income, have a lower life expectancy. This is one of the reasons why. It costs money to be healthy.
Those 30 minutes that's supposed to be my lunch, I take them to try to, take a nap.
More and more workers are having to double up, 2 or 3 families into one apartment. Others have to move further and further away to places like California City, Lancaster, Barstow, I've heard.
And all of this is happening while the hotel industry in LA is booming.
There is no other place that will host both the World Cup and the Olympics back to back. The hotel industry is growing. There are 90 development projects in the works. Billions of dollars is being spent on the expansion of LAX. This industry is extraordinarily prosperous.
They can't afford it, to increase their wages, to pay their employees more.
Workers are asking for a $5 raise up front and a $3 raise each subsequent year of the 3-year contract. But the hotels aren't coming to the table.
The hotel is not bargaining with the workers. They're just not.
It is not acceptable in the middle of the greatest hotel boom in the history of Los Angeles that the industry would fail to even put a penny forward, not even a penny, in terms of a counter proposal.
Just think of all the money that comes into a city like Los Angeles, right? I mean, you have the movie industry that's there. You have a music industry that's also in LA. Also, there's the tourism. I mean, these hotels like the Ritz-Carlton, like they should be paying people a living wage. And people shouldn't even have to live that far away in a place like Barstow, of all places, just so they can afford to have a roof over their head. But that is what is happening. Los Angeles has one of the highest homeless populations in the country. What is being done to curb that? Why aren't they giving these people homes? And I don't want to hear that they don't have enough housing. That's the same thing people have said here in Boston, Massachusetts. There is enough housing. The problem is the housing that's available is often unaffordable for people. So how long is this going to continue to go on, people? How long is it going to continue to the point where the homeless population continues to increase and people can no longer afford to live in these cities unless they are professionals? Because that's really what's happening in a city like here, Boston, which was a working class city. It's not working class anymore. Most people can't afford to live in the city. So it's just, how long is this going to continue? And if you want to talk about the housing units, maybe something that needs to stop, these mayors of these cities, they need to stop allowing these private real estate investors to come in and purchase apartment buildings, condo buildings, and jack up the prices. They need to stop that from happening. I don't know if maybe they need to change the zoning laws. I don't know. But that is something that should be prevented, and it's not happening.
June 8th, hotel workers voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike.
If I'm a tourist coming in July, I would be thinking about remaking my plans, because when you show up, you will not have clean rooms, you will not have food, you will not have banquets, you will not have any services.
There you go.
I would suggest that everyone take a break from LA on July 4th weekend.
There you go.
What those workers do is make this city run and make the most important industry in our city prosperous beyond all imagination. And right now, it's our turn.
What we're asking is something that we really deserve because we worked hard for it. Asking everybody to stand by us, with this strike, it's a huge thing.
We got to stand with the workers, guys. Like, and I'm telling you about this story, not just because I think it's important, but also because soon it will be July 4th, and a lot of you will probably travel during that time. And I don't know if any of you were thinking about traveling to LA, but you may not want to do that July 4th weekend. That is the date that they are looking at, which is probably one of the most popular tourist dates in Los Angeles, actually in the country, probably. But this is something I want to talk about because we need to discuss what is actually the cost of living in Los Angeles. How much do you need to earn to actually be able to live in Los Angeles? Now, a while back, I showed you this report. It's the high cost of housing report. I will show you the new one this year when that is published in July. I think it's at the end of July it'll be published. But this was the one for 2022. What's great about this report is you can actually look at any city. And I think we played around a little bit last time I was here and we were going through different states and things like that. But let's dive into California. So listen to this. Just California, and then we'll get to some of the other areas. We'll go to Los Angeles, but California alone. In California, the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $2,028. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $6,761 monthly or $81,133 annually. So obviously, the woman that you saw in that video, and I'm pretty sure most of the people that work in those hotels are not making over $80,000 a year. So that's just to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. We're not talking about trying to buy a house. That's assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year. This level of income translates into an hourly housing wage of $39.01. So in California, in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, you roughly should be making $39 an hour. This is why the fight for 15, that's nothing. Nothing. It's a start. But you need to go further. Now, if we go down here, we can look at different places in California. So it shows you here the minimum wage in California is $15 an hour. Average renter wage is $30.39 an hour. That don't add up. That don't add up. 2-bedroom housing wage, $39. You need to make $39 an hour. You see this? So people are still making poverty wages even though they have that $15 minimum wage. How are they supposed to catch up? Let's go down here. The most expensive areas, the San Francisco, Santa Cruz, San Jose, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, and Santa Ana, Anaheim, and Irvine areas. These are the most expensive areas. San Francisco housing wage, you need to make $61.50 an hour. I don't know about you, but I don't make $61 an hour. So just this is very revealing. Santa Cruz, $60.35 an hour. We'll put the link in the chat, guys. I see some of you asking for it. San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, $55.15. Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, $48.38 an hour. And Santa Ana, Anaheim, Irvine, $44.69 an hour. Let's go to Los Angeles. There's Los Angeles here. Unfortunately, I can't click on Los Angeles. But in Los Angeles, I'll just try to show it to you here. Just point to it. Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Glendale. You need to make $39.31 an hour. I wish I could make this. I don't think it'll go any larger than that. The text is. Okay, that's a little bit better. Right here, Los Angeles. You need to make $39.31 an hour. You see the problem? Now, this report, I got to tell you, we'll go over the new one again this year, but you can look at any state, any city, and see what you should actually earn just to afford the cost of living. The name of this is called the high cost of housing. Out of Reach 2024. Eric, if we can put the link to that in the chat, and Roger Meadows put this on a Dropbox, but you guys can also look at it yourself. But you'll see all the different states here. There's tables. Like, I can even tell you, even for my state, you're supposed to make at least $37.97 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Massachusetts. And I know plenty of people making way less than that. So this is the problem. This is the problem. So until you fix this, like, people need a living wage, and the rent, there needs to be some type of a rent cap. I don't know. Every city is different. Every state is different. But this is absolutely insane. If you live in Boston, Cambridge, Quincy area, you should be making $46.13 an hour. Now, I lived in Cambridge. I lived in Somerville. I lived in Boston. I've lived in all these places, but I never lived alone. Okay? I never lived alone. Most people have roommates. And this is the reason why. So what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. And something needs to change. I will keep my ears peeled to see if that strike does happen July 4th weekend. I don't know if it will, but I'm just going to stay tuned for that and give you an update if it does. If it does happen, I think this will be really huge. Really huge. Okay. Eric, can you put the link to that in the chat? Thank you. Or if you find the website one, that works too. Bad Cookie says that happened to me in Chicago. Had my rent raised $100 3 years in a row after the pandemic. Had to move to the outskirts. And that's another thing. Like, technically, they shouldn't have increased rent during the pandemic or right after. That should not have happened, but it did happen. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. I lived in Vegas in 2004 when Steve Wynn displaced families to build his Wynn Hotel. I think they changed the name of that, didn't they? Because they built a version of that here in Massachusetts. And I remember they had to change the name because he was caught up in some allegation. Thank you for the super chat, Nicole. I work at HIE in the 6th biggest city in Kentucky. Only 5 of the employees live in town. It's too expensive. You see what I mean? Yeah, that's a problem. That is a big problem. Okay. Richie says when the housing market collapses, that's when people feel the real deal of capital/corporationism. I hear you. I hear you. Let me see if I can. Thanks so much, Eric. So Eric put the link to that in the chat, you guys, so you can check that out and see what your pay should be for the state and the city that you live in. Okay. But we'll follow that story. We'll follow that story.